The world economy is now more dynamic and uncertain than ever before, and the main driving force of this global economic system is the dollar. Just 80 years ago, in 1944, the dollar became the main currency of international transactions through the Bretton Woods Agreement, because at that time, the dollar was linked to gold. At that time, $1 could be bought for an equivalent amount of gold. Finally, in 1974, America made a special agreement with Saudi Arabia, which is known as the petrodollar agreement. The essence of this agreement is that when Saudi Arabia sells oil to any country, they will accept the price of oil only in dollars. So if any country in the world wants to buy oil, they will have to collect dollars first, and Saudi Arabia will invest the huge amount of dollars they earn in American banks and bonds. In return, America will provide military security to Saudi Arabia. Because of that petrodollar agreement between Saudi Arabia and America, a fragile currency like the dollar has gained a monopoly on transactions in the world market. But recently, some countries have been trying to trade oil outside the dollar. How America uses the dollar as a weapon and imposes sanctions on various countries, and whether the dominance of the US dollar will end soon, will be discussed in this episode. Our episode today is made from an article in the Y magazine, published jointly by the Royal Scientific Publications. You can buy Y magazine from the link provided in the video description and pinned comments. America has its own vast oil reserves, but the country has historically been the largest importer of oil. However, in 2011, crude oil production in America also increased rapidly, and the United States began exporting 8.5 million barrels of oil per day. In 2022, this amount increased to 1.5 million barrels per day. As a result, the United States itself became the world's largest energy producer. Due to the increase in production, the United States imposed sanctions on Russia in 2022 and began exporting U.S. oil to European countries. In this way, by imposing sanctions on other countries, the United States not only directly seizes their businesses, but also uses the dollar as a political tool. When a country collects dollars to buy oil, that country naturally becomes dependent on the American economic system. The United States uses this dependence strategically, and if a country takes steps against America's interests, the United States can impose financial sanctions on them. It can limit their banking transactions and freeze that country's dollar-based assets. In the past, the United States has used such sanctions unfairly on several countries, including Iran, Russia, Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, and others. This means that America does not impose sanctions based on its military power. Rather, America can use the dollar to impose sanctions on anyone it wants. The question may arise, what will happen if the people on whom America imposes sanctions do not comply with these sanctions? But the point is that there is no way to ignore this embargo. The dollar-based global banking structure has made the United States the most powerful in this regard. The main means of international money transfer is SWIFT. It is a Belgian organization, but its activities are actually conducted in accordance with the financial regulations of the United States. The United States can exclude any country from SWIFT access at will. Being excluded from SWIFT means being completely cut off from transactions with all banks in the world. When Iran was under the SWIFT embargo, their economy was greatly damaged. Oil exports decreased, foreign transactions were disrupted, and massive inflation occurred. This is a direct example of the political application of the petrodollar system. In addition, the United States plays an influential role in various financial institutions, including the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, or IMF. If a country wants to borrow from these institutions, the United States can impose various political conditions on those countries. Because the United States has the most votes and influence in the decision-making of these institutions, the United States has maintained this economic power in the dollar-based lending system. Another major way in which the United States uses the dollar as a political weapon is through the role of the dollar as a reserve currency. The world's central banks also deposit dollars as foreign exchange reserves. Countries use those dollars to invest in U.S. bonds. As a result, the money of the people of other countries is forced to directly and indirectly boost the U.S. economy. But accumulating dollars is not an issue for America, because the U.S. can print as many dollars as it wants. and the entire world has to pay the price for this inflation of the US dollar. No other country in the world has such an advantage, and by taking advantage of this economic advantage, the US oppresses all the countries of the world. The US allies, especially Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and the Gulf Arab countries, including Qatar and Kuwait, earn billions of dollars by exporting oil in dollars and invest those dollars in US banks and stock markets. This process is known as the recycling of petrodollars. Through this system, American money returns to America, and through this the US economy remains stable. Investment in the stock market increases, and the US influence in the global economy becomes stronger. As a result, the US is able to control the countries using the dollar politically. At the same time, the United States uses its petrodollar system as a complex diplomatic weapon on various issues, such as arms deals, military security, and political support of various countries. After the Russia-Ukraine war, the political use of the petrodollar system became more aggressive. The United States seized Russia's dollar reserves and banned its banks from dollar transactions. As a result, Russia was forced to start non-dollar transactions with China and other countries. Although China and Russia have been able to create alternative paths, Russia has not yet overcome the damage that the United States initially inflicted. Although the world economy is closely linked to the dollar in many ways, dollar dominance has faced various challenges in recent years. Due to global warming and climate change, various countries around the world are currently turning to renewable energy. The expansion of renewable energy could significantly reduce oil trade. However, it is difficult to say for sure whether the petrodollar dominance will end completely. But it is not that the attempt is not being made. The BRICS countries took the initiative to launch their own BRICS currency or BRICS currency to reduce dependence on the dollar in international trade. This alliance of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa strongly brought forward the idea of this currency to create an alternative system to avoid U.S. sanctions and increase their economic influence. Although this system is not yet effective, the BRICS countries are increasing trade outside the dollar among themselves. At the same time, China and Russia have also taken the initiative to launch a separate gold-based currency. For this reason, China and Russia have bought and stored a large amount of gold in recent years. At the same time, China, Russia, and Iran are trading a large amount of their own currencies together. China wants to launch the petro-yuan instead of the petrodollar. For this reason, the Chinese yuan has become an alternative currency to the dollar to buy oil from Russia and Iran. However, even if the situation of the dollar falling does not happen now, the dollar may weaken in the future for three reasons. First, if the demand for oil in the international market changes. Second, if renewable energy expands. And third, if the balance of global political power changes. History shows that these three elements were never permanent, so this dominance of America will not last long. Interestingly, although the United States is the world's most powerful economy, the U.S. government is currently carrying the world's largest debt burden. In 2025, the total national debt of the U.S. federal government is about $38 trillion. This amount of debt is unprecedented not only in the history of the United States, but also in the history of the world economy. If you want to know why and how the United States has survived as the world's most powerful economy despite being the world's most indebted country, you can watch this video. If you want to know such things about world politics, economy, history, or geography regularly, you can read the and Why magazine.